While they chatted on the shoulder, a bound girl lay in the trunk half a meter away, listening to every word. Evan Torres did not know this. He only knew that the wind cutting across Route 18 was colder than usual for a Tuesday in March, and that his exhaustion was a physical weight pressing behind his eyes. He had been driving for 5 hours, rerouted by his GPS off the interstate and into the desolate, rolling darkness of western Pennsylvania. The digital clock on his dashboard read 11:42 p.m. The road was a ribbon of cracked asphalt surrounded by endless, sleeping fields, devoid of streetlights and devoid of mercy. He had seen the hazard lights from a mile away. They pulsed in the darkness like a distress signal from a dying star, rhythmic and orange, slicing through the mist. Evan's initial reaction, honed by years of living in cities and listening to his mother's paranoid warnings, was to keep driving. His foot had actually hovered over the accelerator, ready to speed past. But as his headlights swept over the stranded vehicle, the calculated indifference of modern life warred with a deeper, older instinct. The car on the shoulder was not a rusted van or a suspicious truck. It was a late-model silver sedan, clean and respectable. It looked like the kind of car Evan himself drove. It looked like a pharmaceutical sales manager's car. And standing beside it, shivering in a light windbreaker, was a man who looked entirely harmless. Evan slowed down. The internal debate lasted only seconds, but it felt agonizing. If I were stranded here, in the middle of nowhere with no cell service, I'd pray for someone to stop, he thought. The isolation of the road was absolute. Leaving a human being alone in this black void felt like a moral crime. He pulled his vehicle onto the gravel shoulder, about 20 feet ahead of the silver sedan. The crunch of stones under his tires sounded violently loud in the silence. Evan killed the engine but left the headlights on, casting long, distorted shadows against the tree line. He checked his phone, no service, and gripped it tightly in his right hand anyway. It was a talisman of safety, even if it was functionally a brick. He stepped out into the biting air. The stranger walked toward him, hands raised in a gesture of apology and gratitude. He was Asian American, perhaps in his mid-40s, wearing pleated slacks and a button-down shirt that looked crisp despite the hour. He wore wire-rimmed glasses and had the harried, frustrated expression of a businessman whose schedule had just been obliterated by mechanical failure. "I am so sorry to flag you down," the man called out, his voice fighting the wind. "My electrical system just died. Everything, even the interior lights." Evan walked toward him, stopping a polite distance away. He glanced at the silver sedan. It sat dark and silent, a dead hulk of metal. "No cell service out here either," Evan said, his breath pluming in the cold. "I checked mine before I got out." "Tell me about it," the man said, wiping a hand across his forehead. "I'm Marcus Chin. I was trying to get back to Youngstown. I think it's the alternator, but honestly, I do not know the first thing about cars." "Evan," he replied, nodding. He looked at Marcus, then passed him to the trunk of the silver sedan. The hazard lights of Evan's own car reflected off the polished bumper. It was just a car, just a piece of machinery that had failed. "You restuck in a bad spot, Marcus. The next town is probably 10 miles up the road." "I know," Marcus sighed, offering a weary, charming smile. "I do not suppose you heading north? I just need to get to a gas station or somewhere with a landline. I can call a tow truck from there. I hate to impose, but I am a bit out of options." The request was reasonable. It was the request Evan would have made. Every logical circuit in Evan's brain fired with the confirmation that this was safe. This was just a guy having a bad night. The social contract dictated that Evan help him. "Yeah," Evan said, making the choice that would dismantle his life. "Yeah, I can give you a lift to the next station. Hop in." He turned his back on the silver sedan. He turned his back on the faint vibration in the air. He did not see Marcus's eyes flick toward the trunk of his own car, a micro-expression of cold calculation that vanished as quickly as it appeared. Evan began to walk back toward his vehicle, assuming Marcus was following him to safety. He did not realize that by offering a ride, He had not solved the problem. He had just auditioned for a role in a nightmare. The gravel crunched rhythmically under their feet as they walked back toward Evan's car. The dynamic had shifted subtly. Moments ago, they were two strangers shouting across a gap. Now, they were companions in a minor crisis, bound by the intimacy of the empty road. "I really appreciate this, Evan," Marcus said. He had grabbed a small leather overnight bag from his back seat before falling in step beside Evan. "You have no idea. I've been standing out here for 40 minutes. I was starting to think I'd be sleeping in the driver's seat." "It's not a problem," Evan said, though a tiny, prickling sensation had started at the base of his neck. It was a primitive alarm system, vestigial and usually ignored. Marcus was walking slightly too close. Not aggressively so, just inside the boundaries of personal space that Americans usually maintained. "I work in logistics," Marcus continued, his voice smooth, filling the silence of the night. "Distribution networks. Irony is, I manage fleets of trucks, and here I am, unable to keep my own sedan running." He laughed, a dry, short sound. "Life has a sense of humor." "I'm in pharmaceuticals," Evan offered, unlocking his car with the fob as they approached. The amber lights of his car flashed, a beacon of safety. "Sales. Sales," Marcus repeated. "So you know how to read people. That is good. You have to trust your gut in sales." They were 10 feet from Evan's passenger door. The wind died down for a second, creating a vacuum of silence. In that silence, the world seemed to narrow down to the beam of the headlights and the black void beyond. Evan moved to go to the driver's side, but Marcus did not immediately move to the passenger side. Instead, he stopped. He stood right at the rear bumper of Evan's car, effectively blocking Evan's path to the road, forcing him to squeeze between his own vehicle and the ditch to get to the driver's door. "Hey," Marcus said, his voice dropping an octave. "Before we go, do you have a charger? My phone is dead, and if I can get a charge, I might have the map saved offline." "I have a USB cord inside," Evan said, gesturing vaguely. "Let's just get inside, it's freezing." "Right? Freezing." Marcus did not move. He was staring at Evan with an intensity that felt incongruous with the casual conversation. The friendly, harried businessman facade was thinning. The skin around his eyes seemed tighter. Evan felt the urge to apologize, a reflex of politeness, but he stifled it. The silence stretched too long. "Is something wrong?" Evan asked. "No," Marcus said softly. "Just thinking about my car. Hate to leave it. Sensitive." In the trunk of the silver sedan, 20 yards behind them, Rachel Morrison was screaming. She was screaming with her mouth taped shut, the sound dying in her throat, vibrating against the carpeted walls of her prison. She had heard the second car pull up. She had heard the voices. She had felt the vibration of footsteps fading away. Hope, hot and agonizing, had flared in her chest, followed by the crushing terror that they were leaving. She kicked out. Her legs were bound with zip ties, cramping and bruised, but she lashed out backward, driving her heels into the latch mechanism, into the lid, into anything solid. Evan took a step toward his door. "Look, we can call the police to check on the car once we get to town. I'll be fine." Marcus shifted his weight. He dropped the leather bag. It hit the ground with a heavy, metallic thud that did not sound like clothes. "I do not think we need police, Evan. I really do not like police." The air grew heavy. The harmless logistics manager was gone. In his place stood a man who was coiled like a spring. Evan's hand tightened on his phone. He looked at the passenger door, then back at Marcus. "Just get in the car, Marcus," Evan said, his voice trembling slightly. "You a nice guy, Evan," Marcus said, stepping closer, closing the gap. "I can tell. You stopped. You wanted to help. That's rare." He reached out and placed a hand on Evan's forearm. It was not a friendly pat. It was a clamp. The fingers dug into the muscle and tendon, anchoring Evan in place. "Let go," Evan said, shock freezing his legs. "We going to take a ride," Marcus whispered, leaning in, his breath smelling of stale coffee and mints. But not to town. We gonna go back to my car for a second. I need you to help me with something. Evan tried to pull his arm away, but Marcus's grip was iron. The pretense was dissolving. The spider had walked across the web, and the fly was thrashing. Evan opened his mouth to shout, to yell at this stranger to back off, but the night swallowed his courage. He was alone, and then he heard it. Thump, thump, thump. The sound was faint, muffled, but in the stillness of the rural night, it hit Evan like a gunshot. It came from the silver sedan behind them. It was rhythmic, deliberate. Thump, thump. Evan stopped struggling for a split second. His eyes locked with Marcus's. The transformation was complete. The mask of the frustrated commuter did not just slip. It evaporated. Marcus's face went slack, the faux warmth replaced by a dead, flat stare that signaled an absolute absence of empathy. It was the face of a shark surfacing. What was that? Evan whispered. The question was rhetorical. His brain, screaming in denial, finally processed the data. The broken car, the lack of service, the bag that sounded like heavy tools, the refusal to call police. It's nothing, Marcus said, his voice flat. Just the suspension settling. Ignore it, Evan. Walk. Marcus yanked Evan's arm hard. He was trying to drag him back toward the silver sedan, back toward the darkness behind the headlights. Thump, thump, thump. The sound grew more desperate. It was not suspension. It was a person. Someone was alive in that trunk. Someone was fighting to be heard. The reality of the situation crashed down on Evan with the force of a physical blow. This was not a robbery. This was not a carjacking. This was a slaughterhouse on wheels, and he had just volunteered to be the next piece of meat. There's someone in there, Evan stammered, his feet skidding on the gravel as he tried to brace himself. Do not be stupid, Marcus hissed, abandoning the charm entirely. He twisted Evan's arm behind his back, a practiced move, forcing Evan to bend forward. Pain shot through his shoulder. You gonna walk back to that car, you gonna open the trunk, and you gonna help me, or I will leave you in this ditch. Marcus's other hand moved to his waistband. Evan did not see a weapon, but the motion was unmistakable. Move, Marcus barked. Evan was paralyzed. He was a sales manager. He built spreadsheets. He negotiated contracts. He did not fight for his life on roadsides. He was 30 feet from his driver's seat. Safety was right there. But with his arm twisted and Marcus's body weight driving him backward, it was an impossible distance. The thumping continued, a frantic drumbeat of terror. It was a girl or a woman or a child. The realization made Evan sick. He looked at the trunk of the silver car, now looming closer as Marcus forced him backward. He could imagine the darkness inside. He could imagine the heat. Please, Evan gasped. I would not say anything. Just take my car. I do not want your car. Evan, Marcus whispered in his ear. I want you to be useful. They were halfway between the vehicles now. The darkness of the field to their right seemed to press in. Marcus was strong, stronger than he looked, and he had the leverage. Evan felt his knees buckling. He was going to lose. He was going to be dragged to that trunk, and whatever was inside would be the last thing he ever saw. The hopelessness was absolute. He had stopped to do the right thing, and the universe was punishing him with death. The logic of it was cruel and perfect. As Marcus shoved him again, Evan's boot slipped on a patch of loose oil and gravel. He stumbled, his weight dropping suddenly. The abrupt movement loosened Marcus's grip on his wrist for a fraction of a second. It was not a plan. It was not heroism. It was pure animal panic. In that millisecond of slack, Evan did not try to stand up. He did not try to punch Marcus. He spun with the momentum of his fall, ripping his arm free with a tearing sound of fabric and skin. He did not lunge for his car. Marcus was blocking the way, and the keys were in the ignition. Evan threw himself to the right, off the asphalt, and into the void. He hit the steep embankment of the ditch, rolling through dead grass and thorns. The cold mud soaked his jeans instantly. Hey! Marcus roared behind him. The sound of heavy boots hitting the gravel followed. Evan scrambled to his feet in the pitch blackness of the field. The ground was uneven, treacherous with unseen holes and rocks. He ran. He ran blindly, his lungs burning instantly in the freezing air. He did not look back. He could hear Marcus crashing through the brush behind him, cursing, the predator giving chase. Evan fumbled for the phone still clutched in his death grip. He held it up like a lantern as he sprinted, watching the screen through tear-blurred eyes. No service. No service. He tripped, smashing his knee against a rock, but adrenaline masked the pain. He scrambled up, loping deeper into the field, away from the road, away from the cars. "I can see you, Evan," Marcus shouted, his voice closer than expected. "There's nowhere to go." Evan looked at the phone again. 1 bar. He did not stop. He hit the emergency button. The screen glowed white in the darkness, a beacon that surely gave away his position, but he did not care. Connecting. 911. What is your emergency? Route 18. Evan screamed, gasping for air, his legs pumping. South of Newcastle. Man with a gun. Girl in the trunk. "Yes, chasing me." "Sir, I need you to calm down. What is your..." "Route 18. Send everyone." "Yes, right behind me." Evan heard the snap of a twig less than 20 yards back. He veered left, diving into a cluster of high brush, and threw himself flat against the freezing earth. He covered the phone screen with his chest, plunging himself into darkness. He held his breath. His heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird, so loud he was sure Marcus could hear it. Silence fell over the field. Then, the sound of slow, crunching footsteps. Marcus was hunting. He was walking slowly now, listening. Evan squeezed his eyes shut. He thought of his warm apartment. He thought of the bed he was supposed to be sleeping in. He thought of the thumping in the trunk. Then, a sound cut through the night. Not a footstep, a siren. It started as a low wail in the distance, then grew rapidly, joined by another and another. Blue and red lights began to stroke the sky above the road, flashing against the clouds. The footsteps near Evan stopped. Then, fast, retreating crunching sounds. Marcus was running back to the car. Evan did not move until he heard the tires screech. He stayed in the mud until he heard voices, amplified, authoritative voices demanding surrender. Only then did he stand up, shaking so violently he could barely walk, and make his way back to the road. The scene was chaotic. Police cruisers blocked the road. The silver sedan was surrounded. Officers had weapons drawn. Evan watched from the edge of the asphalt, wrapped in a shock blanket a paramedic had thrown over him. He saw them pop the trunk. He saw the officer recoil, then reach in. He saw them lift her out. She was young, maybe 22, her hair matted, her face bruised, her wrists bound with thick plastic ties. She was sobbing, a raw, broken sound that cut through the police radio chatter. They caught Marcus, whose real name was Gregory Walsh, 3 miles down the road, trying to hide in a drainage pipe. An officer came over to Evan. "You did good, son," the trooper said, clapping a heavy hand on Evan's shoulder. "She would have been dead by morning. You saved her." Evan looked at the girl. She was safe. She was alive. The narrative said he was a hero. But as he stood there, watching the red lights wash over the scene, Evan did not feel like a hero. He felt the phantom pressure of Marcus's hand on his arm. He remembered the ease with which he had opened his door, the smile he had offered the monster. He looked at the dark stretch of road leading home. He knew that for the rest of his life, every time he saw a car stranded on the shoulder, every time he saw hazard lights pulsing in the dark, he would not feel the urge to help. He would feel the cold, suffocating terror of the trunk. He had saved a life tonight, but he knew, with a certainty that made him pull the blanket tighter, that a part of him had died in that field. He would never be a good Samaritan again. He was a survivor now, and he knew the difference. The girl in the ambulance was alive because of a miracle. Evan was alive because he ran. And as the wind howled across the empty pen,